You know the person. They're charming, a pillar of the community, and absolutely 100% convinced of their own goodness. They talk a big game about morality and integrity, and you can't help but admire them. They just seem to say all the right things. They can come across as kind, helpful, maybe even a little morally superior. But whenever you're around them, there's this subtle unease you can't quite put your finger on. A chill in the air, a feeling of being quietly judged or made to feel small, even while they're smiling and offering you help. Well, what if that unwavering conviction in their own righteousness isn't a sign of virtue at all? What if it's the very thing the pioneering psychologist Carl Jung considered the single most dangerous trait a person can have? According to Jung, the real villains aren't always the obvious ones who telegraph their bad intentions. The true danger, the kind that can poison families, destroy careers, and tear a person's soul apart, comes from those who are completely blind to their own capacity for darkness. Because when someone believes they are pure light, their darkness doesn't just vanish, it gets projected onto you. Jung gave us a map of the human psyche, and on it there's this territory we all have, a place he called the shadow. This is where we stuff all the parts of ourselves we deny, repress, and simply refuse to look at. It holds our envy, our greed, our anger, our insecurities. Everything really we've been taught is bad. Now, the average person, they struggle with their shadow, right? They might mess up or act out, but on some level, they know they're not perfect. But the most dangerous person is the one who's convinced themselves they have no shadow at all. Their ego is so inflated and so fragile, it just can't handle the thought of being flawed. So they perform this terrifying mental trick. They take all their inner darkness and they cast it out, forcing the world and the people around them to wear their disowned faults. They become the righteous prosecutor, totally unaware that the evil they see everywhere is just a mirror of their own soul. They are, as Jung warned, possessed by their own unrecognized darkness. So let's explore this most dangerous of all human traits. First, we'll sketch a portrait of this seemingly perfect person. Then, we'll get into the core of Jungian thought to understand the mechanics of the shadow and projection. After that, we'll arm ourselves with the red flags to watch out for. And finally, and this is the most important part, we'll turn the lens inward, because Jung's ultimate message wasn't about judging others. It was about the courageous, lifelong work of knowing ourselves. As he famously said, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. This isn't just a psychological lecture. It's a masterclass in protecting your own mind. So what does this person actually look like? Forget the cartoon villain. The person Jung warns us about stands in the brightest light. They might be the beloved teacher, the tireless activist, the CEO praised for their ethics, or the family matriarch who holds everyone to her unwavering moral standard. They wear a mask of impeccable goodness. Their defining trait is a hypnotic, unshakable conviction in their own righteousness. They don't just believe they're right, they are right. Their perspective isn't a point of view, it's the truth. This isn't just arrogance, it's a profound identification with the ideal of good. In their mind, they're an agent of light. And anyone who disagrees is, by definition, misguided, ignorant, or even evil. When you first meet them, it's easy to be impressed. They ooze confidence and clarity. In a messy world of gray, they offer the comfort of black and white. You can get swept up in their certainty. They might even take you under their wing. But this is where the poison starts to seep in. Their help feels a lot like control. Their advice isn't a suggestion, it's a command wrapped in a compliment. If you stray from their path, you aren't just making a different choice. No, you're making a wrong choice, and you will feel the chill of their disapproval. It's not loud or aggressive. It's much more insidious. A disappointed sigh, a condescending tone, a sudden emotional distance. It's a subtle manipulation that makes you question your own judgment. You start thinking, maybe they're right. Maybe I am being selfish. Maybe my feelings are wrong. Being in a close relationship with someone like this, it's like living in a reality distortion field. They are the sun, and everyone else, well, they're expected to orbit them. Their values and their emotional state, they set the tone for everyone. They can't show genuine empathy, because to truly feel another's perspective, that would require them to step outside their own rigid worldview. Instead of empathy, what they offer is judgment, disguised as concern. "I'm only telling you this for your own good," they'll say, right after delivering a crushing critique, one that only serves to reinforce their own superiority, of course. One of the most telling signs, though, is their complete inability to take responsibility. Nothing is ever their fault, ever. If a project fails, well, it's because the team was incompetent, obviously. If a family argument blows up, it's because everyone else is just too sensitive. They have a PhD, seriously, in blame shifting, with a well-rehearsed story of being the chronic victim. Listen closely to how they talk about their past. It's always a trail of broken relationships. And in every single story, the other person is the villain. They were betrayed, misunderstood, or simply let down. And after a while, you just have to ask, don't you? If everyone you've ever known has failed you, is the problem really with everyone else? This creates a deeply confusing and exhausting environment. You find yourself walking on eggshells, constantly trying to avoid triggering their righteous indignation. You feel guilty, but you're not sure why. You're being judged against a standard of perfection that they themselves don't meet, but they are totally blind to the hypocrisy. The rules apply to you, not to them. Jung called this an inflated consciousness. He said such a person is hypnotized by itself, and therefore cannot be argued with. It inevitably dooms itself to calamities that must strike it dead. You cannot reason with them. You can't show them evidence that contradicts their self-image. Their entire psychological house of cards is built on the foundation of their own blamelessness. To admit a flaw would be to pull the one thread that makes it all collapse. And this is what makes them so dangerous. It's not that they're consciously plotting to hurt you, they genuinely believe they're helping. They're operating from a place of profound unconsciousness, possessed by an ideal. They're blind to the cruelty in their kindness, the control in their help, and the aggression in their righteousness. They're a living example of that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But why does someone so convinced of their own light create so much darkness? To understand that, we have to look at one of Jung's most essential concepts, the shadow. To get why the morally righteous person is so dangerous, we have to go beyond their behavior and look at the engine room of the human mind. Jung gave us the keys to this place. They're the concepts of the shadow, projection, and ego inflation. Imagine your personality as a house. The main floor is your conscious self, your ego. This is the room you show to the world, decorated with the traits you're proud of, your kindness, your intelligence, your sense of humor. But every house has a basement. And in the basement of the psyche, Jung said, lives the shadow. The shadow is the unconscious part of our personality. It's the dumping ground for all the parts of ourselves we've rejected and disowned. This starts when we're kids. We're taught that certain parts of us are bad. A little boy who's told, boys don't cry, well, he shoves his vulnerability into the shadow. A little girl, praised for being quiet, learns to push her bossy, assertive nature into the basement. Don't be angry. Don't be selfish. Don't be weak. all of these perfectly normal human impulses get locked away in the dark. And so, the shadow fills up with our greed, our envy, our lust, our rage, all the stuff we can't bear to see in ourselves. As Jungian analyst Robert A. Johnson wrote, "The shadow is everything we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves." But here's the thing people often get wrong. The shadow isn't inherently evil. It's just what's unknown and unlived. Jung was clear about this, writing that the shadow doesn't just hold our flaws, but also good qualities, like normal instincts, creative impulses, and realistic insights. This is sometimes called the golden shadow. Maybe you were raised in a family that valued security above all else, so you pushed your adventurous, risk-taking spirit away. That adventurous spirit is now a part of your shadow, a golden part of you, waiting to be found. Facing the shadow takes real moral effort. It forces you to accept the humbling truth that you are not who you think you are. You are both light and dark. This is why Jung famously said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Wholeness isn't about being perfect. It's about integrating your imperfections. So what happens when you refuse to go down into the basement? When you pretend it doesn't exist? The shadow doesn't just go away, it demands to be seen. And if we won't see it in ourselves, we'll be forced to see it in others. This is the mechanism of projection. Projection is the unconscious act of slapping your own unacknowledged qualities onto someone else. It's a defense mechanism. It's like you're carrying a movie projector around, but you don't know it. The film reel is a movie about your own inner life, but you project it onto the people around you, completely convinced the movie is about them. This explains one of Jung's most powerful insights. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That intense, over-the-top emotional reaction you have to a quality in someone else? Well, that's a flashing red light that you might be looking at your own shadow. For instance, the person who's infuriated by their arrogant boss might be projecting their own repressed desire for recognition. Or, the person disgusted by their lazy neighbor? They might be projecting their own exhaustion and deep wish to rest. As Jungian analyst James Hollis says, when we find something troubling in another, it's often because they're acting out something in our own unconscious. You know, in relationships, projection is the source of so much conflict. At first, we often project the good stuff, our golden shadow, as it's called. We see our partner as the embodiment of our own unlived confidence or creativity. And that's the magic of infatuation. But eventually, the negative projections, they start. We begin to see our own disowned flaws in our partner's behavior, and we attack them for it, totally blind to the fact that we're really just fighting with ourselves. Now, we can put it all together. The dangerous person isn't just someone with a shadow. We all have that. Their problem is they've combined it with a catastrophically inflated ego. Ego inflation is when the ego gets puffed up and identifies with something bigger than itself. An archetype like the wise one or the righteous one. It's often a defense against deep feelings of inferiority. The ego feels small, so it latches onto a godlike image to feel powerful. Jung described it as an overblown balloon, impressive in size but fragile and easily punctured. This creates a vicious cycle. The inflated ego defines itself by its own perfection, and if it's perfect, it can't possibly have a shadow. No anger, no selfishness, no flaws. But since those things exist in every human, where do they go? They get projected violently. This person's inflated ego is like a fortress wall, designed to keep self-awareness out. To admit a mistake or feel genuine guilt would be, annihilating. It would pop the balloon of their identity. So all their psychic energy, it goes into maintaining the illusion. The person who feels a deep unconscious greed becomes the one who constantly accuses others of being materialistic. And the person with a repressed desire for control, they start seeing abuse of power everywhere, except of course in the mirror. This is why they are so certain. Their certainty isn't strength. No, it's a symptom of a fragile defense. They have to be 100% right, because being even 1% wrong risks a total collapse. This is why Jung said such a person is incapable of learning from the past and incapable of drawing right conclusions about the future. They are trapped, you see, in a psychological prison where their ego is both the inmate and the warden. And from inside that prison, they pass judgment on the world, never realizing they're only talking to themselves. So how do you spot this in the wild? You know, it's rarely one big thing. It's usually a pattern of behaviors that, when you see them together, paint a pretty disturbing picture. These are the red flags you truly can't afford to ignore. Let's start with sign 1, absolute certainty and moral absolutism. The biggest indicator is a total lack of humility. This person operates from a place of absolute certainty. Their worldview isn't just a theory, no, it's a fact. And their moral code? That isn't a guide. It's universal law. There's just no room for nuance or doubt. When you discuss something complex with them, they don't explore ideas, they issue verdicts. Anyone who disagrees with them isn't just mistaken, oh no, they are ignorant, foolish, or even morally corrupt. Now, for sign 2, the chronic victim and the incessant blame game. Pay really close attention to how someone tells their life story. Because for this person, absolutely nothing is ever their fault. Their life is one long, epic tale of being misunderstood, betrayed, and let down. They are the perpetual victim, always. The failed business, that was their partner's fault. The estranged child, they're ungrateful. The job they lost, that was because of a toxic boss, of course. You see, because their ego can't admit any flaw, it has to build a reality where they are always innocent, and the world is always to blame. And if you're in their orbit, well, it's only a matter of time before you're cast as the next villain. Sign number 3, a pathological inability to handle criticism. This is the real stress test. A healthy person can take feedback, even if it stings. But for the inflated ego, criticism isn't just feedback, it's a declaration of war. It's a threat to their entire identity. Their reaction is usually swift and way over the top. They might hit you with cold dismissal, saying something like, "You clearly don't understand." They might gaslight you, saying things like, "I never said that. You're being hysterical." Or they might just erupt with righteous anger, attacking your character for daring to question them. The goal is always the same, to kill the criticism. Now for sign number 4, good, deeds that subtly control and diminish. This is one of the most confusing signs. This person often seems incredibly helpful and generous, but their help comes with invisible strings. Their generosity creates obligation. Their support is conditional on you doing what they want. They offer unsolicited, quote, advice that's really a judgment on your life. They help you in a way that highlights your incompetence and, well, their superiority. You walk away from an interaction where they've done something for you, feeling strangely smaller and less capable. It's virtue, used as a weapon of control. Sign 5, the use of gossip and scapegoating. This person is often a master of social manipulation. They create in-groups of loyal followers who validate their worldview, and an out-group to dump the shadow on. They're often skilled gossips, but it's not idle chatter. No, it's strategic. It's how they define reality for the group and paint someone as the problem. They gather allies and slowly poison the well against anyone they see as a threat. If you find yourself in a group where one person is constantly the villain, well, look for who's directing the story. Sign 6. A complete lack of self-deprecating humor. Being able to laugh at yourself is a sign of psychological health. It shows your ego is flexible enough to admit its own absurdity. The person with an inflated ego, they can't do this at all. They might have a sharp wit they use to cut others down, but they can't turn it on themselves. Their mistakes aren't funny stories. Instead, they're injustices that were done to them. They take themselves with absolute seriousness. Sign 7. A chilling change in energy. This one's more intuitive, but it's real. When you're with this person, you might notice a sudden, unsettling shift. One moment, they're charming, and the next, a coldness just descends. It's as if the mask slipped for a split second, and you glimpsed the void behind it. Your intuition registers this as danger. It's the feeling that you're not talking to a real person, but to a performance, and the director is someone you don't want to meet. Recognizing these signs isn't about diagnosing people. It's about pattern recognition for your own well-being. When you see this pattern, you're not just dealing with a difficult person. You're dealing with a psychological program designed to distort reality. Trying to play their game is a losing game. If these signs are hitting a little too close to home, and this exploration is providing some value, hey, take a moment to subscribe and share this video. You never know. You might be helping someone make sense of a really confusing and difficult relationship in their own life. Now, this all leads to the biggest question. What do we do about it? And what does this say about us? Okay, so your first instinct now is probably to go out and start labeling all those, shadow projectors and inflated egos in your life. And while setting boundaries is absolutely essential, Jung's wisdom, well, it points us down a much deeper path. He would argue the ultimate solution isn't external, but internal. He had this rule for the psyche, and it's a powerful one. When an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate. This, in fact, is one of the most profound statements in all of psychology. It means if you don't courageously deal with your own inner stuff, your own shadow, you will meet it again and again out in the world, in the form of difficult people and painful situations. The person who doesn't deal with their own repressed anger will, well, they'll, coincidentally, always run into angry, aggressive people. What we don't own on the inside, it owns us from the outside. So the most powerful way to become immune to the projections of others is to withdraw your own. The ultimate defense, you see, is to integrate your own shadow. This is the work Jung called individuation, that is, becoming a whole, individual self. And it all starts, really, with shadow work. Shadow work is the tough, moral job of making the unconscious conscious. It's truly the courage to go down into your own basement and turn on the lights. So, how do you even start? Pay attention to your projections. Your strongest emotional reactions are a compass pointing right at your shadow. The next time you feel an intense flash of irritation, judgment, or envy, just stop. Instead of focusing on them, turn it inward. What is this activating in me? What part of myself am I seeing in this person? This turns every annoying moment into a chance for self-discovery. Use Jung's line as your mantra. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Next, practice radical self-honesty. This is the considerable moral effort Jung was talking about. It means actively looking for the traits you hate most in others, within yourself. Despise arrogance? Find the subtle ways you feel superior. Hate selfishness? Look for the small moments you put your needs first at others' expense. Condemn dishonesty? Be honest about the white lies you tell yourself. This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about radically accepting your own full humanity. 3. Study your dreams and fantasies. Jung believed the unconscious is always talking to us, especially in dreams. He noticed the shadow often appears in dreams as a dark, menacing figure of the same sex as the dreamer. Paying attention to these figures, what they want, how they make you feel, is a direct line to the repressed parts of your psyche. Keeping a dream journal is a powerful tool for this. 4. Embrace wholeness, not perfection. The goal of shadow work isn't to get rid of the shadow. That's impossible. The goal, you see, is integration. It's about bringing the shadow's energy into the light, where it can be understood and used for good. Your repressed anger, once integrated, becomes the fuel for setting healthy boundaries. The point isn't to become a good person, but a whole person. As Jung put it, I would rather be whole than good. He also said, how can I be substantial if I do not cast a shadow? I must have a dark side also if I am to be whole. Once you're on this path, your relationship with the dangerous person completely changes. First, you develop a kind of psychological immunity. When they try to project their anger onto you, it has nothing to stick to, because you're already aware of your own. You can see their projection for what it is, a confession about them, not a statement about you. Second, you learn to set firm, calm boundaries. You don't need to fight or try to convince them. You can just state your reality with quiet confidence. A simple, I understand that's how you see it, but my experience was different, is a powerful act of defiance. You're refusing to be a character in their drama. You're holding the line for your own sanity. The great irony is that by facing your own darkness, you do more good for the world than any self-proclaimed righteous person ever could. In 1937, Jung said that if you find someone courageous enough to take on their own shadow, that person will have done an immeasurable good for the world. Why? Because you stop adding to the cycle of blame and scapegoating. You take one piece of darkness out of the world's collective projection. We started this by identifying a dangerous sign in a person. Not obvious evil, but that profound unconsciousness that comes from an absolute conviction in their own goodness. We've seen how this fragile ego, in a desperate attempt to stay perfect, projects its darkness onto everyone in its path. We've learned the red flags, the certainty, the blame, the inability to take criticism. But the final and most important turn is the one that leads back to ourselves. The wisdom of Carl Jung is not a weapon for judging others, but a mirror for our own soul. The temptation is to use this knowledge, to get better at spotting flaws in other people. The real invitation is to become a more honest witness to ourselves. The ultimate protection from the darkness of others isn't building higher walls. It's kindling a brighter light within, and that light is only kindled by bravely facing our own shadow. It is the difficult, humbling, and lifelong work of admitting we have the capacity for everything we judge in others. It's the journey from a fragile ego that needs to be right, to a resilient self that can afford to be wrong. In the end, Jung reminds us what this is all for. As far as we can discern, he wrote, "The sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. That light isn't found by pretending the darkness doesn't exist. It's kindled right in the heart of that darkness, through the courageous act of self-knowledge. By looking within, we don't just save ourselves. We do our small, essential part to heal the world." What are your thoughts? Have you encountered this dangerously good person in your life? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if you're ready to keep going deeper, make sure you're subscribed.